Today's video is a little bit different. In the CSOM programming series, till today, most of the work, almost all of the work, has been with the objects that users is actually working with. So like list, library, file, list item, content type, things like that. Today, we're going to go to the administration side. So we would like to work with the objects that users are not directly working with them, but most of the time these objects are accessible with the access to the administration site, and you don't really log in to a single website. You have to be SharePoint admin to go there and make those changes or do that kind of work. So in today's session, I would like to log into the administration on Office 365 using code and make changes there. The easiest thing that I could think of that we can do is updating the SharePoint profile field. So let's get into it and see how we can do it. To start with, I'm going to log into Office 365, go to the administration, and see how the profile looks like, and pick a field and get into coding. We'll start by going to SharePoint, and I want to go to the Admin Center, and I click on SharePoint. So this is our Office 365 site on SharePoint Online. And to see the user profiles, I can click on User Profiles. And here under User Profile, we have Properties and Manage User Profiles. So I want to go here and see the existing user profiles. I already created a user profile called Test1 that it shows here. And if I click on this drop down, I can click on Edit My Profile, and it actually takes me to a different page that I can see all the user profile properties that they are assigned to this account. In this case, I want to update the About Me field, and I want to replace this value with something that we enter into the Windows application on the client, and we use CSOM to push the value for the About Me into this field. So there are a couple of things that you need to pick from here and take it to my client-side code. First thing, I need to get account name. So account name is going to be the whole title that I have here. So let me just copy this and paste it here. So this is going to be my account name. The other thing is the field that I want to update. So for this one, I picked About Me. So I would say field to update. But here is the thing. What you see here as About Me is just a title of this property. The actual name that I can refer to this field by that name is not here. To do that, you need to go back to User Profiles. Then you need to click on User Profile Properties. And here you will see all the properties that they are assigned to SharePoint Profile Services. And in here, we can find About Me. So when I find About Me, if I click on this drop down and I click on Edit, you will see the actual field name is About Me without space. This is case sensitive, and you should get it exactly as it appears here. So I take it from here, and my field name is actually About Me without space. Okay. Now let's get into Visual Studio and start coding. If you want to connect to this profile service and we want to update one field, I pick About Me field, and let's see if we can put something to our Windows application so that it goes to SharePoint administration and updates that user profile. When we go to Visual Studio, I start this project by going back to Credentials Factory. If you remember, in one of my other projects, we created a class that we pass the username and password, and it automatically creates the right credential object that we can use it to log in to SharePoint, whether it is on-prem or SharePoint Online. I don't want to rewrite this code, so I just refer to this project and add it as a reference. If you don't already have this project, I put the link right here So click on the link, go there, watch the video, create your project, and then come back and continue. So when this project is created and compiled and it works properly, I just come here, I go to the solution, I add a new project. This project is going to be a Windows Forms application, and I call it Update Profile Field 01, for example. And what I have here, I want to have a button, and this button, I want to call it Update Profile. Let me expand it a little bit. And I also want to give it a proper name called BTN Update Profile. So when it is done, here are a couple of things that I want to do. I want to add a text box for the account name. So this text box, I want to call it TXT account name. Right under it, I want to have another text box, and I want to call it TXT field name. And right under this, I want to add another text box, and I want to call it TXT field value. Account name, field name, and field value. So I just put the value here, but later on we can change it if you want to apply another if you want to update another profile. And for the field name, if you can remember, it was about me, but this is the actual field name that we got from there. So again, I bring it here and we come to the text and we update it. And for the value that I want to pass to this field, I want to expand it a little bit, and I also want to make it multi-line. So if I want to add more and more content to it, I can freely add it. So these are the basic things that I have in this project. Now, when I go onto the code, there are a couple of things that I need to do to start with. Just like any other CSOM code, I need to add references. Just like before, I go to browse and I add client, runtime. But one more thing, other than these two, because I want to work with the user profiles, I need to add the DLL that we can use to refer to the user profile objects. So I click on browse, and again, under 16 Hive, I go under ISAPI, and this time I search for user profiles. So Microsoft.SharePoint.client.userprofiles is the one that I want to add here. And now I click on OK. And I have all the references that I need for this project. Of course, I need to come to the top of this page and I add using Microsoft.SharePoint.client. And just like before, again, it gives me error. I go to the potential fix and I say define this one as a Windows form. And again, I come back here. I need to add reference to Microsoft.SharePoint.client and this time user profiles. Now we start coding. To do this code, I want to be a little bit more organized. So I start with some global variables here on the top. Protected string tenancy name. And this is the tenancy that I have, and it's called missing advice. And the reason that I'm using this, because I want to concatenate it into a couple of other strings that I needed for the code. I also need to have another variable, admin username. That is going to be my own account. And of course, password. I say admin password equals, and here's my password. And of course, add a region here. And I call it general settings and region. Perfect. So I have the region, and here's my general setting. And one more thing before I start coding, I need to add the reference to the credential factory. So I go to the references, add the reference, and this time I go to the project and I add the credential factory. I click OK, and I also need to set this project as a startup project. Okay, now this is how we want to start the work. So I start by creating a URL. I call it site URL equals. We start with https :// Remember, we had the tenancy. I put it here, and I also concatenate it with admin.sharepoint.com. Make sure you make the admin URL. Without admin URL, it doesn't work, because as I told you before, now we are trying to connect to the administration site. And the user account that we use here, this user account, must be the admin, at least the SharePoint admin of this tenancy. Now I can create my client context using client context, and I call it CTX equals new client context, and now I can use the site URL, which is actually our administration area. Under it, the CTX requires credentials. So for the credentials, I'm using the credential factory. Credential factory dot SharePoint credentials 101 dot create credentials. And create credentials accepts 3 simple parameters. So the first parameter is going to be admin username that I entered there. Then that's going to be admin password. And finally, I want to decide on SharePoint authentication, and I would say it is SharePoint Online. That's it for the credentials. Now, when the credential is created, it's time to use this user profile. Under user profile, there's a class called People Manager. So I call it PM equals new People Manager object. And this People Manager object is actually looking for a client context that refers to the SharePoint Central Administration. And this PM has a function called set single value profile property, or it also has set multi-valued profile property that I don't want to get into it at the moment. So set single value, perfect, I pick it up. Now we go back to the account name that we had. So the account name is going to be txt account name dot text. The property name that we have, it's property name or field name. And finally, the value that I have is going to be txt field value. That's pretty much it. So I just need to go to ctx.execute query and finally display a message. Update completed. That's pretty much it. So let's review the code. We provide the site URL to the SharePoint administration. We create a context. We add the credentials. Now this time we create an instance of the People Manager. People Manager object has a function or a method called set single value profile property. And after we pass all the values, we just use the execute query and we show the message. Let's see how it works. Okay, let's just build it. Update profile, right click, build, and okay, tiny error, convert, yep, field value dot text. It's a very good idea to actually trim all these values because these are user entries. And I also trim this very last one. And now I should be able to build it. Yes, build complete. Let me run this project. So the member is defined, field name is defined. So I would say This is from CSOM 101, and I click on Update Profile, and it says update is completed. Let's go back to the profile and see if the update is done. So if I go to User Profile, and again, Manage User Profiles, Test, Find, and if I go to Edit My Profile, the About Me field has to be updated. So this is the value that we see here. Okay, this part was easy because the field was just a content that was stored there in the user profile as text. But there are some other fields that actually the data is stored in SharePoint term store. So you're going to find the term set and see where those values go. These are the multi-valued fields. So I picked one example, and I will show you when we put the data there where it is actually stored. And then we come back and we start coding and making the updates to those kind of fields, which the code is slightly different. After that, I want to come up to a unified function that regardless if the field is single value or multi-value, you can pass the values to the field, you can pass the values to the function, and it goes there and makes updates. Let's get into it. Now, multi-value fields are a little bit different. So let me go to one of the fields that are actually multi-value. If I scroll down, for example, job title is multi-value. Ask me about is multi-value. If I go, for example, to office location is multi-value. Past projects is multi-value. And for all these things, or schools is multi-value. So for all these fields are actually taxonomy fields. So I pick schools and I add a new field to it, just a completely random field, and I call it ABCD school. I never entered something like that, so it is completely new. I scroll down and I click on Save and Close. And if I again come back to Test and I click on Find, you will see this field is actually updated, and it's a separate field, and I can add something else to the end of it. But where is this value stored? It is actually stored under your term store. So if I click on term store and I go to system, under system and under keywords, this ABCD school is added. So if there is a value already added to the fields as keywords, you can find it here. If user just enters something by himself or herself, it will be added to this term set. And as a result, user can always add the multiple values to one single field. So if I go to the user profiles here now, and I pick up the same user, and I go to edit my profile, in addition of this ABC school that I added here, I can say XYZ school. And if I scroll down and save it, actually more than one value is added there, and they are stored as multi-valued field. Let's take a quick look and edit my profile. Just scroll down and you see now there are two separate values here. Now let's go and add two schools for this person from code. To do that, just like before, we need to look up school and see what is the actual field name for it. And just like before, I go to user profiles and I go to manage user properties and I find schools. And under schools, if I click on edit, you see the actual field name is SPS school. So I just copy it and I bring it back here. And this time my field is SPS school. So let's go back to our code and see how we can do it. In order to do this one, I have a little bit of more work to do. So in order to take care of multi-values, I need to decide on a separator. Let's take a look at our code. First of all, I need to change this name, and instead of about me, I need to replace it with the field name, which is SPS school, and I just picked it up from the administration. Now, for this one, if I want to have multiple values still text is one property, so I need to decide on a kind of separator that, okay, these are the values that I have. So I go to text now for this one, and I would say school 1, and I separate it by, for example, double @ school 2 and double @ school X. So whatever the separator I decide, I need to utilize it to say, okay, this is one value, this is another value, and this is another value. So when I come to the code, somehow before I call this method, I need to decide whether there is only one value or multiple values. In order to do that, I need to specify a splitter. So I just come to the top of the top of the function, and I define a string array, call it splitter. And this splitter, as we decided, is going to be double @. So now I need to decide whether the value that I'm getting from that text box is single value or multi-value. So I would say string array called values equals txt field value dot split text dot split, and I want to use my splitter, which is this one, and finally string split options. I want to remove anything that has empty values. So this way I can get an array of the values that I have here. Now this array should decide. If this array has only one value, I know it's a single valued field. If this array has multiple values, I need to use multi-value function. So I would say if values dot len equals 1, then do something. So this is my code now. If the value else, so now it's going to be pm dot set multi-valued profile property, account name, just like before. Second is going to be the property name, txt field name dot text dot trim again. Finally, the property values, I have something called values, which is an array that each element in this array is actually one separate value, but now I need to convert it to a list, because this function requires a list of strings. So first I converted a single text to an array. Then I checked. If the array has only one value, I just do whatever I did before. If it has more than one value, then I'm going to call a separate function, but as a part of this function, I'm converting this array into a list of strings. And that's pretty much it. If I scroll down, execute query is there, and update completed. Now let's run this code, and I click on update profile, and it says update completed. Let's go back to SharePoint. I go to user profiles and manage user profiles, test user, find, and I just need to edit this guy. And if I scroll down under schools, you will find school 1, school 2, and school X. Okay, that was it. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I also hope that you have learned something useful out of this video. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned till the next video.